This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with a Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Why is it that when we need a new doctor, our first instinct is to post in the group chat, "Anyone know a good PCP or OBGYN?" I'm totally guilty of doing it, but I always end up finding out that the recommendation is not in-network or the office is too far from home. Enter ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. Once you find the right doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit. Appointments made through ZocDoc also happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/female to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/female. ZocDoc.com/female.
We're finally on here. My uncle's escaped Alcatraz, and we have another special guest. He's been on the podcast before. We had to go through a couple incarnations of Zooms and StreamYards to get him on here. We were having a lot of technical problems, but we're on now. So if our viewfinder looks a little different, we're doing it through Zoom today. Art Roderick, retired U.S. Marshal. Glad to have you on. Thanks for coming on. I know we're going to be talking about something.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah, something different today in relation to Alcatraz.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what we're going to dive into, and we were just going to have someone else on the podcast too. I can't remember his name.
Jonah.
I'm sorry?
Jonah,
yeah. But he seems to be busy doing something.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about a deathbed confession from someone that he has the letter from the deathbed confession.
Yes.
Can you please set this up and tell us the story about this? It's very intriguing.
Yeah, this was okay. The background is there's this African-American gentleman who's dying of AIDS in Seattle in the 80s, early 80s, like around 84, somewhere in that time frame. And there's a nurse that's taking care of him. And as he's into the final stages of his life, he tells this story to her. And she writes it down and then goes and types it out. There's a little preamble on there before she gets into the nitty-gritty of the story that talks about how she's very nervous about this and she's scared that the FBI is going to come and get her and all this. And then she launches into this story. And based on the information in that story, she actually accompanied the individual that was dying. They took him out to a place in Washington State that's a state park, and outlined very particularly this particular location in this state park, and then told this whole story about how they hired a couple people to get a boat out of Seattle, drive it down to San Francisco Bay, pick up supposedly 5 people instead of the 3. It's supposed to be 5 escapees, and then took them back up to Seattle, then drove them to Yakima, Washington, where they picked up some money, some old bank robbery money that Morris supposedly had stashed with this African-American guy who was a different African-American guy who was the driver for him in a lot of his bank robberies. So this statement, this deathbed confession got to me probably in 2002, 2001, 2002, and it kind of passed through a lot of hands. We had the individual that initially put it together that sold it to this producer, different guy, okay, and then this producer sold it to Jonah. And oddly enough, the producer that originally got it and the guy that wrote it are both dead. They both passed away.
Hopefully, of natural causes.
Natural causes, but young, not like from the era of the escape.
Got it.
So it's kind of odd. And of course, Jonah and I were talking about the curse on this particular deathbed confession, where it seems like anybody that handles it for a long period of time ends up dying.
Well,
so we had a little laugh about that. But the basis of this story has a lot of truth. I mean, it's 12 pages long. I analyzed it all. I read 3 or 4 of the really good books out there on the Alcatraz escape, compared them with what's in this statement as opposed to what's in those books. And I came up with an average of about 60% I was able to verify and 40% I can't. And the individuals that are listed in this deathbed confession, I traveled out to Seattle probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 times already since 2001. Recently, just a couple of years ago, I was back out there. We keep going to the same damn location, and we find the markers that are supposedly on the tree. Everything's grown up quite high now, but we do see the markers that are listed in this deathbed confession. The problem is no way you're going to be able to bury anybody there, because it's like glacial rock. I mean, it's literally
permafrost.
Yeah, it's like literally you get an inch down in the dirt and you're getting bedrock. So it really is impossible to bury anybody in that area. We also talked to several of the natural resource officers in the area, and they said there's no way anybody's going to bury anything around that area. And according to the statement, the hole that they dug was about 10 feet deep. Now, the story is they take them to Yakima, they get the bankroll money. They're supposed to drive them up to Canada. It's 2 men, one of them being this African-American gentleman, supposed to take them up to Canada. But their plan is each one of them is given 50 grand. Now, when you look at 50 grand from that time frame to this time frame, it's like $700,000 or something. It's an outrageous amount of money.
Yeah.
Which kind of put up some red flags. They get the money in Yakima. They're driving back through this park in Washington State to take them up to Canada. They pull over to the side of the road, said they got to relieve themselves. They pull out 2 .38s, go in the back, shoot all 3 men, and then bury them there. Now, they buried them with horseshoes, so they were able to find, with metal detector, the location of the spot later. And then they just took the money and went on their way. So the gist of the deathbed confession is, this guy's on his deathbed and he wants to relieve his soul and talk about these 3 men that he killed back in 1962. And it was about 11 days after the escape when they were supposedly shot and killed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I think I've heard parts of that story before.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, in different sections. I think I even saw pictures of you up there. Did you?
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably where I saw. I probably heard.
Yeah, when I hooked up with the original producer back in 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. I think it was early 2001. It was before 9/11, and they had filmed us up there, looking at several locations that kind of matched the description in the deathbed confession, but. Again, I've been up there 4, 5, 6 times, and it's just you keep coming back to the same spot based on the directions in the deathbed confession. But I will say there's some very interesting points in the deathbed confession, because we're talking 1962. So I had gone to the local county museum out in Yakima, and luckily I was able to talk to the individual that actually owned the property that they were supposedly on in 1962. He's in his 90s now. I'm sure he's passed away by now, but he was like 94, 95 at the time. And he said, what's interesting is that's exactly where an African-American person would be living at that particular time. It was like a shack for fruit pickers or agricultural laborers. And that's where they supposedly met. I actually found the location. I thought it was quite interesting that they had nailed it down in this deathbed confession specifically to that address, which, the owner said that would be the only place any African-American person at that particular time would live due to, the bias and prejudice that was going on in the country at the time.
Yeah.
So that really piqued my interest, is that who the hell would know that? Who would know that 20, 30, 40, 50 years later? We investigated the heck out of it. And again, 60-40, I mean, there's a lot of names we know that are mentioned in this deathbed confession.
Can you give us an example, some of the names?
Yeah, the attorney from San Francisco, who was actually in the paper the day after, who supposedly received a call from John after the escape. That's actually a newspaper article where the FBI actually went over and interviewed her, but they think they said more than likely it was just some prank call. But her name's in there, and of course her name was in the paper. So, it's kind of like one of these things where, man, whoever put this together did a hell of a job, because I'm telling you, you could make a movie out of this deathbed confession. It's unbelievably detailed, and there are some points in it that you go, the trip from Seattle to San Francisco is monstrous.
Yeah.
It's a long.
Oh, it's so long.
That's a long.
So long.
Like 18 hours.
Yes. So we thought, man, that's another red flag there in this statement.
That's a lot of exposure time.
It's a lot of exposure time. And I actually went to Bellingham, Washington to look for the name of the boat. And I couldn't find it. I had the Coast Guard looking way back in their records to see if any boat names match that particular description of the vessel. But we couldn't find anything. But it also matches up with the statement from the San Francisco PD officer down at the Presidio area, who had observed the vessel coming in to the bay that evening. Yeah. So you kind of put a lot of that together, and you're like, wow, is there something here or not? The problem is, the thing that really bugged me about this was I could not confirm that the individual that gave the statement was alive anywhere. I looked all over the place for a birth certificate and death certificate. Couldn't find it for the name of the individual. And I couldn't confirm any of the particular names that were close to this particular nurse. Could not confirm who the heck she was. Looked at all the records for that. The two individuals that picked him up, I looked, couldn't find any information on them in Washington State or really anywhere in the country that matched their description. So as interesting as it was, and I'll tell you, that's probably the most interesting lead I've come across. And let me tell you, I've come across multiple weird stories, either written or given to newspapers in Canada. But that one always seemed to pique my interest more than any. The other ones we were all able to discount.
Yeah. I mean, could have been like a misdirect. I mean,
well,
with the fact that
it could be. I mean, it could. We've had so much bullshit come across our desks on different scenarios of what happened to these guys, and none of them have panned out. So
yeah.
As interesting as this one was, I think it's got to go in the category where I just can't confirm it.
Yeah. And then out of the other 60%, so you're like, a lot of the names matched up, the location, but like when
they had guards' names in there. They had names in there that you could get from like the newspaper articles or books that had been written.
So like if you were paying attention to the case and you were kind of interested in it, you could have kind of gleaned some of this information from all the stuff that's already was out there.
Yes. That was the conclusion I came to at the very end of this. But it's still, to this day, sometimes I think about that particular deathbed confession, and I'm like, wow, whoever did this did a great job.
Yeah,
phenomenal job putting it together.
That's crazy. Ken, what do you think? What do you think about that, Ken?
Well, it's funny that this story that we're talking about is actually the first story that drew me and Art together.
Right.
I mean, I was actually going up to Seattle with my brother and Michael Esslinger,
Yeah.
meeting up with Art that's the first time I ever met him. Now, I don't know if he knew me before then, but first time I've ever met him, and we were doing a clip or a sizzle reel for the History Channel on the deathbed confession. And I would have to say, as Art shared that information with us, I was intrigued. I mean, probably one of the things that caught my attention the most about the story, it's like Art said, a lot of the story you could have picked up from the newspapers. You could have picked up from listening to the news. The one thing that I don't think they could have picked up, and this is one of the reasons why I believe Fred Breezy and some of his stuff, is that in the story of the deathbed confession, they talk about more than 4 people. They talk about 5 people.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, the only time that's ever been discussed has been in the FBI files, and that wasn't released until the 20s. So whoever wrote this letter or whoever was dictating it, they knew something that they should not have known, which was there were originally more than 4 people involved in this.
Yeah, I don't know if that might have been reported in the press early on.
I read a lot of newspapers, and I never
because they're interviewing West. They're interviewing West. He was supposed to be one of the guys.
Yeah, but the interview with West is only in the FBI report. So unless you had access to the FBI report, you never would have known what West said. And the FBI reports were not released until the late mid-2000s.
Yeah, you got to go back. Look at Jolene Bobiak's book.
Yeah, but even her books,
there's mention of others
you
that
had to have access to those files. And it's the same way, even with me and what me and Mike put together. And that's one of the reasons why I held what Fred Breezy had told the family in '92. He said a few things that really and truly he shouldn't have known. Like for instance, the ability that John was thinking about using the prison boat as a means of escape. Well, of course, that's in the FBI reports where they interview one of the prisoners, and one of the local prisoners says, "Yeah, John came to me early on and said, well, there was a possibility that they might use the prison boats." Well, right. The only way you're going to know that, because it was never reported in the newspapers, well, is that you had to have access to the FBI file.
We don't actually know.
You had to have information to it.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I put Fred Breezy in the same category as the deathbed confession. I've got a ton of them, man. And that one fits right in there very nicely with the story from Canada, Mexico, England, West Canada, East Canada. I've got them all. I got them all.
But logically, Art, do you think, would that be like a logical place for them to go, is to go north like that?
That was always considered north, south. Mexico or Canada. That was
to me, Mexico, south of the border seems to be much more.
Yeah, and it's odd because it was one of these stories, just like the deathbed confession that I have, that was investigated by the Bureau very early on. There was some woman that showed up in a newspaper in Canada at an editor's office and provided this whole statement about how she was with Frank Morris and they were traveling across Canada and how the escape had occurred. And there was all kinds of like religious, praise God and all that stuff in this statement. And this newspaper editor took the whole thing down, and then she disappeared. And he had this statement, provided it to the FBI, but you can tell she was looking for some cash. So,
got it.
Yeah, so it's just another one of these crazy stories where there was some truth in it, but no.
Yeah.
So I've come across several of those.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That are very detailed. And in fact, I had one, let me think. uh, 4 or 5 years ago that I thought was really cool. A guy called me out of England and said he used to sell Range Rover parts in Canada, Eastern Canada, and that one of the guys he worked with, he was pretty sure was Frank Morris. And he gave me all the information, and of course he ends up passing away over in England. And but we researched the heck out of it, and it wasn't him.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the type of stuff. All this stuff is what we've come across over the years, and none of it has panned out.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, they're talking about Frank Morris, both of those last two things you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think the possibility that they split up after they, and then, you know, Frank went north, they went south, just to kind of.
It could, if they got to that point, we always thought maybe that would have been it. But they
just to create more, also create more confusion.
Right. And usually it's very rare that you have a group that'll hang together after they escape. I mean, the last one I can think of that actually did that was those guys out of Texas. Ended up getting arrested in Colorado. They stayed together, which is highly unusual. So I always thought that Frank being Frank and the two brothers being what they were, that they would have split up, and the two brothers would have tried to at least make some contact with the family. But, you know, of course, Frank doesn't have any family.
Yeah. So, yeah, and he probably felt better going it alone if he possibly could anyway, just way control his own destiny. He doesn't have to.
Right. Yeah.
There's 3 people. That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's going to be noticed. You know.
I mean, 2 people.
Especially,
2 people's a lot, but you have 2 brothers who are like twins that can trust each other implicitly no matter what, and can read each other's mind, and that's a unique situation.
Exactly. Yeah.
They would stay together no matter what.
And you know, the brothers knew how to go north and south. So you know, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I would say that's probably what they would have done if they did get out of the bay and make it to land. You know, they're familiar with Mexico. You know, that was always an obvious place where they would have gone.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things, just jumping in here, that when we were doing research for the book, is we did uncover a document that Frank Morris had ordered some books and magazines, you know, a few weeks before the escape, and 2 of the books that he ordered were Spanish books. Mm-hmm. So he was clearly brushing up on his Spanish. So that suggests to me that he was going to go south, not north.
Well, either that or that was his plan to make us think that.
Or that he was.
You know, anytime you order a book in jail, it's registered and it's on a piece of paper, and they will know about it. So, and I'm pretty sure they knew that too. I mean, these 3 guys were not stupid by any stretch. So, you know, that's the first thing I do as an investigator, going and look at escape cases. I look at the visitors logs and all the stuff that they've been doing the past couple of months.
Well, and to add to the Mexico connection, after Alfred died in '64, you know, the FBI goes to interview his cellmate, or his previous cellmate, and they asked him about the escape. And according to the cellmate, Alfred told him that they had survived, that he was first despondent and sad because he thought his brothers had died. He'd warned them not to do it because the chances of success were very minimal. And then Robert, the brother, visits him, and he's just this happy self after this visit because Robert tells him that they're still alive, that he knows where they are. And the other thing that the former cellmate said was he believed that they were in Mexico, specifically Frank Morris, because Frank Morris was fluent in Spanish. And he said, you want to look in the Monterrey area of Mexico because he had spent time there. That would be the place. So somehow he knew that Frank Morris spoke Spanish, and where Frank Morris would hide after the escape.
Yeah, he's a convict.
Yeah, but you know,
he's a convict. Period. Listen, you can't take what these clowns say.
But how would he know this information?
Listen,
how would he know this about Frank Morris?
Immediately when I go in and do an interview, I know they're lying to me. I know they're lying to me. Look at the interviews West did with the FBI. Jesus, that guy's unreal. They finally had to cut him off. He was so full of shit. So, I mean, hey, that's fine. I get it. It works in fine with all the other stuff, but they're convicts. They lie for a living.
Yeah, but there are convicts that have been free for over 60 years.
They've been dead for over 60 years. I agree with you. That's free too. Being dead is free.
So you don't.
Never gonna agree.
So the FBI interviews with Alan West, you felt like there was not anything that he said that was truthful.
No, there was some stuff in there that was truthful, but he was being very bravado about it. And there was several talk going around at the time that he chickened out, or that he.
No, he didn't chicken out.
Well, there's talk
No,
that he chickened.
There was a reason why he didn't go.
And I'm just telling you what I read in the FBI reports. Okay?
Now,
they finally cut him off.
So
they finally cut him off. They said no more interviews.
Yeah, but I will tell you now. I know you don't hold a lot of light to Whitey Bulger. I know but I will tell you something he told me, because I asked him this very question.
Yep.
I asked him. I said, "Okay, as many prisoners that were rooting for them to make it." I said, what would have happened to Wes once they found out that he, told the FBI, hey, they went north, they were going to go to Angel Island, steal a car, cross the bay, steal a car, go north.
Yeah, I know.
What would happen to him if the rest of the prisoners knew what he had done? And Whitey said they would have killed him.
You mean like he ended up getting killed in Springfield?
To the yard. And Whitey said he told them exactly
Whitey Bulger. It's Whitey Bulger. He is the biggest friggin' liar on the planet. All he does is promote himself.
Okay, but let me ask you this. So let me ask you this.
Don't get Whitey Bulger anywhere within 10 miles of a lie detector. I'll tell you that. So that thing will be screaming.
So Officer Chechi didn't, according to the FBI, didn't see what he saw. And then you have Cliff Fish, who said he found a raft. I guess that didn't happen. And
that didn't happen. That did not happen.
And then you have Charles Herman, who backs him up. And then you have my Uncle Man, who says that he's been in contact with him. He's been in contact with him for 25 years. So all of those people are wrong, but the U.S. federal government was correct.
They're all wrong, every one of them. Because your premise is
telling me that the U.S. federal marshal.
I did these conferences on CrimeCon, and I would host. We would actually get a valid case come in. People would actually spend the weekend with me, and we'd go through the whole case file. And the first thing I tell them all the time is, put your conspiracy theories in your back pocket, because they don't work. None of that shit works.
Okay, but I ask you this.
Everything's been investigated. There's not been one single piece of evidence to show that they.
What piece of evidence do you have to back up your theory?
Oh, I've got plenty.
What?
Yeah. None of the thousands and thousands of leads that we've got over the years have ever panned out.
That's not.
And that's not 300 lookalikes that we've gone to.
Not evidence. Show
me
it is. One piece of evidence that backs.
I'll tell you what. Why don't you show me one piece of evidence?
I did. I showed you a photograph.
There's nothing there, buddy. There's nothing there.
There are 5 independent people that you hired.
Not them. I don't care. It's not a science.
2015.
It's not them.
It is them.
It's not them.
And the guy that you hired
for a fact, it's not them.
And if you bring him on right now, he will back it up and say that's them.
I don't care. It's not a science. Why are you relying on junk science?
No, I have a question for you. Hey, hold on one second. I got a question for Art.
It's not DNA. Show me DNA.
I got a quick question for Art. All right, there's that one, and who knows? This is the FBI file where it talks about they believe that they made it to South America. Is that like a doctored document? Is that a fake document?
No, I think that's probably something they picked up somewhere. I don't know. I've never heard that.
Yeah,
I mean they did investigation down there. We did investigation down there.
Yeah,
they're on the Interpol red notice list. So
when did you guys
all over South America, Belize, Central America, Brazil?
Okay. And then what year did you guys do that?
20. Well, the Interpol notice has been out for a long time. The red notice has been out forever. The stuff to Brazil was probably 2015, 2014, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And they have got no records of anything down there. So
now, if they were under an assumed name and had different documentation under an assumed name, that obviously would kind of cause some confusion as well, though.
no, they have an Interpol red notice out. So you can't change your fingerprints. So if they were printed anywhere or had any contact with law enforcement, it would have popped up.
Okay. So, but if they didn't, then it wouldn't have popped up, correct?
It wouldn't have popped up, right?
Okay. So let's just say that they had fake passports from another country living under an assumed name down there, and they kept their nose clean and they didn't get popped by anybody. They could fly under the radar, couldn't they?
They could, but they, come on.
I mean, these guys
Talk about grasping at straws.
Hey, listen.
My God.
It's
I think the problem is I know 10 times more than what you guys are actually have access to. And a lot of stuff I can't talk about. I'm just telling you, it's not them.
But let me ask
but
you.
here's the perfect example. If you have this much information and that why can't you talk about it?
Because I can't talk about it. Because it's an open criminal investigation.
But the last time
I say this to Ken all the time. It's an open.
I know, but the last time you were on with us, you had said you even said yourself that regardless if they got caught and that
right.
they wouldn't be prosecuted. This would be
right.
like the only thing that would be done is like you guys would just take that file, close it, tie it up, and like, all right, this is done.
No, they would be processed through the system. The warrants would be, I mean,
nothing would happen. Nothing would happen because more than likely they are dead. So right. And
they're all dead.
So
yeah, they're all dead.
Why wouldn't the government want to kind of release that information? They're releasing all sorts of other information. I mean, it's one of the biggest. You're saying conspiracy theories.
Stand by. That's all I'm going to say. Stand by.
Stand by.
Yep.
Like for how long?
Very soon.
Very soon.
Yep.
And it's definitive. It's definitive proof that that of all that we're all talking about stuff that will like put it to bed, or is it just?
I'm not going to say anything. No, we're going to put it to bed.
Okay.
So what you're saying is records are going to be released at some point in the near future.
Long gone are the days of waiting to be seen in a doctor's office only to have that awkward conversation with your healthcare provider. WISP gives you access to sexual and reproductive healthcare from the comfort of your home. Get treatment for BV, yeast infections, UTIs, and much more delivered directly to your home or ready for pickup at your local pharmacy in less than 3 hours. The best part? WISP is discreet, convenient, and you don't need medical insurance to receive care or prescription medication. Visit us today at hellowisp.com.
Hello, Nigel here. I couldn't help noticing that you're still awake. Now, I'm an owl. I'm supposed to be up at night, but you need your sleep. So if it's your allergy symptoms that are keeping you up, here's a word to the wise. Try Xyzal. You see, Xyzal works fast to relieve sneezing, runny nose, itchy watery eyes, and itchy nose and throat. And it keeps going strong for 24 hours, so you can get your sleep and wake up refreshed and ready for a productive day ahead. Be wise, all. Take Xyzal at night. Use as directed. Starts working in 45 minutes.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Records, I don't know if we release records, but, there'll be something coming up.
Now, is this sort of in the same vein or the same momentum as, with Donald Trump releasing JFK files and Martin Luther King files? Is this part of that same kind of, or is this totally different?
Totally different.
And the reason for releasing this stuff now, as opposed to like 10 years ago? Just random?
Stand by. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. I've teased it enough. Stand by.
Okay.
Well, I do have one more question in the
Yep.
standby element, and that is this going to be like an official government release? Is this going to
Yes.
be like so the government's going to come out with some information of one form or another?
Yep.
That is specifically related to the Alcatraz case.
Yes.
Okay, so and it's going to be a formal announcement of some kind.
Yes.
Okay. Then I'm all ears. I'm all eyes.
Exactly. We're all
I
on
guess
here.
we'll wait and see.
I mean, you understand though, the reason why there's so much speculation is, and people filling in the gaps, is because we don't have the information. You have the information. And so that's why it's like,
well, it's a criminal case. I mean, you don't, I mean, even though I'm saying if we actually caught them and brought them back, we would go through whatever process I talked about, where we would cancel the warrants and, process them out. But up to that point, it's hard to talk about. It's a criminal investigation.
that's over 60 years old.
It's a criminal investigation.
Yeah.
I don't care how old it is. It's an active warrant. The judge still has an active warrant. 3 of them.
With a lot of dust on them.
No, we clean them off every week.
Well, I did have a question going back to the deathbed confession. Actually, I had 2 questions. The first one was you kind of alluded to a little bit. You have the guy that's dying, you have the nurse that's taking care of him, and then in the midst of taking care of him, he communicates to her like, I gotta unburden myself. There's a story I have to tell before I die, because I know he knows that he's dying. He's not going to last much longer.
Right.
And so there's great urgency to tell his story, in which she writes down, of course. So how does it go from her to eventually the producer of the show that, was working with this deathbed confession? How does it change hands? Who's involved?
According to the guy that actually had it, this nurse gave it to a specific individual who also worked in kind of a hospice type setup in Seattle when AIDS was first coming around in the early 80s. And this guy worked as a kind of a nurse's assistant or something. She supposedly gave him the statement. He took it and sold it to this producer.
Mm. So he's doing it to make money then, it seems.
I would think yes, but he really didn't ask for too much, which was another red flag.
Really?
Yes. There's
like how much?
I always said,
How much
I said, I actually interviewed him. I surveilled him and interviewed him. And he really, if you got a story like that, that's like gold, right? And he wasn't really asking for much. I paid his electric bill. It was stuff like that. So I'm thinking in the back of my head, okay, this is bogus, because this guy is worried. He doesn't want to take too much money because he doesn't want to get in trouble, right? If he's taking 10, 15, 20, 25 grand.
Draws attention.
And he really didn't ask for a lot. And again, this guy, the guy that I think I don't know if I mentioned this before, Ken, or not, but he's kind of a conspiracy theorist, and he had this website, and he had pictures of like actual video. He supposedly had taken a Bigfoot down in North Carolina. Of course, it's the usual pictures of Bigfoot. Everything's kind of foggy and hazy and
grainy, and
something's running across the road. Yeah. So this was the kind of guy we were dealing with. But again, you read the statement off the top of your head and you're like, wow, there's a lot of good stuff in here. It makes you go back and dig further into it.
What about this guy? Is this the guy Jonah you're talking about, or someone else?
No. Jonah's the kind of the end of the guy that got the statement, who was the nurse's assistant, is dead.
Got it.
The guy that he sold it to is dead. And
Got
then
it.
Jonah bought it from this guy, the producer that passed away.
Got it. And then why did Jonah want it?
I think he'd been talking to this other producer and he wanted it because he thought it was a great story to try to get out and make a movie.
Got
Didn't they actually do something like a
He
History
did.
Channel clip on it or something?
He did. You know, I'll tell you what, not Jonah, but Zarelli, the guy that had it before. There's a shitty documentary out there.
I remember
with Danny
seeing it.
Trejo.
Yeah.
That's
And they actually shot them in a van. They were in a van rather than a truck.
right. Yeah.
You know,
That's
Jeff
it. Though.
confession was a truck, but this was a van.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the documentary that was made of that.
Yeah.
Well, you can watch it on Netflix if you want.
Yeah, it is. It's out there.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad, but it has all of us with the original footage from 2001, which I was like, man, I'm getting old.
So this guy Jonah now just is in receipt of this deathbed confession.
Yeah.
And hope to God nothing happens to him. You know, it's like seems like you said, it seems like it's cursed, that piece of paper.
Don't park
Yeah,
on
I
the
know.
hills.
I'm glad I only have a copy.
There you go. Keeps your arm.
I never touched the original. I saw the original, but I never touched it. Thank God.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to touch that.
Yeah, but I have copies of this statement.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that my understanding was that for the money that, because you'd said something that was a little bit different that I hadn't heard before, that the money had actually come from the families. The families provided the 50,000, or the Anglin family provided 50,000, and Frank Morris's family provided 50,000.
No, they didn't have that money.
Well, yeah, that was the
No,
point.
no. In the statement, it talks about it's old bank robbery money because they describe in there the denominations of bills and how some of them were new and some were old.
And didn't you say one time, Art, that in the file it was a black man that used to drive the car for Frank Morris.
Yeah.
When they did a bank robbery, he would drive the car, and then when Frank Morris got caught and went to prison, this guy, of course, didn't get caught. He had all the money. I'm just remembering some of the things you told me.
Yeah.
And then when they got out, they went to this black man's house, and he gave them the money that I had heard. I didn't hear 50. I thought it was 25,000, but
it was 50 a piece, and we were like, man, that's just
a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a lot
of money.
Yeah, I mean, for an individual like that who was living back in that time, that means he had $150,000 in his, somewhere. It's kind of hard to believe he had $150,000 sitting around that he was going to turn around and give the three men 50 a piece. That's kind of hard to believe.
And I mean, you're right. And I also thought, my God, if any bank had that much money ripped off, more than one bank, obviously, but still, when you're talking about 150 grand in today's money from back then, yeah, that's like over $2 million, $2.5 million, somewhere in that area.
Yeah,
and there would obviously be some record of banks getting robbed for that much, even if it was multiple banks.
Even if it was multiple banks, yeah.
Because let's just say you got 25. How many banks can you rob to get that much?
Right.
So I mean, banks back then didn't carry that much cash.
Well, and two, you got this African American guy who is living, I'm assuming you said like a neighborhood that you would find an African American living in. He didn't know Frank Morris was going to be able to get out of prison, and he's sitting there with $150,000, and you telling me he's just living in a regular old little house in a subdivision. Going, at some point in time, one day Frank's going to get out, and I'm going to need to give him $50,000.
Yeah. Because it really didn't get into. It didn't get into. It just, that was the story they gave, but it didn't talk about that guy's background. You know what I mean? The driver's background. So, like other than that's exactly where somebody of African American heritage would have lived at the time. Like they had no records or any of that stuff. These people were picking fruit or whatever, picking and moving.
So if you were to rate this on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being believable, where would you put this story at?
I'd say 60-40, right? Confirmed 60. I mean,
So
it's just,
if you were gonna believe that it was 60%, then you would have to believe they made it out of the bay then, correct?
no.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, if you were gonna believe the 60%, right?
No, we're just
Oh, you're saying
we're just
60%
talking the story.
not believable.
We're just talking about the story in a vacuum. I'm not talking
Okay.
about all the other stuff I know. I'm just talking about the story.
I was just trying to understand what you were saying.
Oh, they drowned in San Francisco Bay. What do you want me to say?
Then the deathbed confession is not real.
Right, exactly. But 60% of it is true. Names, incidences, all that stuff. Playing music, all the stuff you can pull out of the newspapers or books. It's in this deathbed confession. Yeah. That's the 60.
I can't remember, Ken. Art, did you ever, Ken, you correct me if I'm wrong, did you ever talk to Uncle Man, Robert England?
No. No, I think, when did he pass away? Ken?
Well, he passed away 2010, but now he did tell me. So let me ask you this question. How long did you have the case?
1988 was the first lead.
Okay, yeah, but when did you take over the case?
Well, I had it from then on, but I mean, there was other people
From
working.
88, from 88
yeah. Till I retired.
And then
2008.
2008? Okay, well, Uncle Man told us, and we also had his son on, so he backed it up, that I believe it was in 2006. So you would have been on the case.
Yep.
And Uncle Man was picked up and taken into Tampa by 2 U.S. Marshals to be polygraphed. Well, would you not have been one of those marshals?
No, I wouldn't have been. No, because I would have been at headquarters. Probably local deputies would have done that. I do recall something about something that sounds familiar to me, but I'm in DC. I'm running the fugitive program for the whole country. Yeah. So I did this case when I could, and then I would feed leads out.
So we talked to Uncle Man after his polygraph by the U.S. Marshals, and I was there whenever I believe it was my mom or one of my aunts asked him about the situation, and he had told us about how that they had come and asked him to take a lie detector test. They drove him down to somewhere in Tampa. They polygraphed him, and then they wanted to do a DNA swab, and he refused. And then they told him, okay, well, you can go. And he said, no, I'm not going to catch a cab. You're going to take me home, whoever brought me. But whenever the family asked him about it, they said, well, what was the result of the polygraph? And he said, I don't know. They never told me. And one of my aunts asked him, said, well, did you pass, I'm assuming? And he said, well, I'm not sure how I passed, but I guess I did.
I don't know.
So did he pass or did he not pass?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't even know if that happened.
But you were over the case. You should have known, though, right?
Something like that sounds familiar, but I'm not sure. We don't do polygraphs. Okay, we would have had to take him to the FBI or to a state police facility for them to do it. So I don't know. I don't even know if it's something like that sounds familiar, but I did know 2 of the deputies that worked on the case for me down there. But we had, 2006, I went back. I ended up going back and running. I was chief of staff for 5 years before that for the Marshal Service. And then I went back to run the fugitive unit as the assistant director. And I still had my hands on the case. So even when I went in 2010, I was working for either DOJ or Homeland Security at the time, but I still was working on the case.
Do you still work on the case today?
Yes. Yep. Officially.
Officially?
Yes.
Aren't you retired?
Yes.
So they contracting you to do this?
I told them I don't want any money.
Oh, so it's an unofficial official.
No, it's official.
Okay, so it's just.
Well, what is it that you're trying to do in this case to just definitively show that they didn't
stand by. That's all I can say. Listen, I had to get approval to do this. Okay.
Okay.
So just stand by.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, we are standing by. So.
Okay.
No, I'll give you a heads up. You'll get a heads up anyway. So
okay.
whenever something official is going to happen.
Okay. Well, that would be cool. Because, it'd be nice to know what the answer is to all this mystery that's been kind of surrounding.
Well, I will say this. Okay, they escaped in 1962. It's now 2025. Not one single lead has ever panned out to show that they got out of the water and made it to land. They escaped. There's no doubt about it. They got off the island. But did they make it beyond the waters of San Francisco Bay? Nothing to this point in time has shown that.
Interesting.
That's where we sit.
I hear you. It's like, but it also sounds like just because the leads didn't pan out, that you like that you're just
the 10,000 leads that we've investigated over the last 60 years.
Well, listen,
no, but it doesn't work like that.
You can have 9,800 leads in the United States that are not going to pan out, and if they're in another country, those are the leads.
We've investigated multiple countries overseas.
Well, yes.
Do you understand what a red notice is? What an Interpol red notice is?
Right. No, I understand. Yeah. The FBI report does talk about other countries. I'm not denying that you weren't looking in other countries, but you were saying, 10,000 leads haven't panned out. Well, nearly all of them are going to be, or a vast majority of them are going to be in the U.S., and we don't expect them to pan out because we don't believe they were there. They were going to be in another country. So you're going to have fewer leads in those countries because that's
not really. No, because we've got offices overseas. We have FBI legats in all these foreign countries. We've got the Interpol notice, which has been out, that has tons of information. We added the DNA stuff in there. So we've covered all bases.
Is it still true? I know it was I guess, like in the 60s, but is it still true that Brazil will not extradite a citizen out?
I think that has changed.
Are you sure?
I asked somebody a few years ago who works in the international unit of the Marshal Service. We can get people out of Brazil, even if we don't have a treaty.
I know you can go in and kidnap them.
No.
But I'm just saying. I'm saying that
just because we don't have a treaty with a country, an extradition treaty, doesn't mean we can't get people out of there. We get people out of China.
Yeah, I understand. But I'm talking about if you've got an individual, because of course you've got the famous, the guy who out of England who robbed a train, who went to Brazil, married, had children. England tried to extradite him many times, and Brazil refused to send him because he'd already become a citizen, he'd married, he had children.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just asking, is that still true with the U.S.?
I don't think so. But interesting, your story just answered the question. They knew where he was. Listen, I've done cases where I had a guy that was wanted here in the U.S. He went to Guatemala. Okay, he married the Attorney General's daughter. We had to wait 10 years before that Attorney General died, and we ended up getting him back.
Okay, but you're misunderstanding something about what I'm saying. Is that I have never said that I believe that no one knew where they were at. I've always believed that the FBI has always known where they were at.
No.
Yes.
What did I tell you before? Put your conspiracy theories away, because all they do is screw stuff up, and you never get to the truth.
Okay.
Seriously,
No,
you'll never get to the
but you
truth.
gotta remember,
Bouncing around and looking at these conspiracies.
hey, but I will ask this question, which I asked another U.S. Marshal one time. Why did the FBI keep the case for 17 years before they ever gave it to the U.S. Marshals?
Oh, you know that answer. I've told you that before. Because in 1978, the Attorney General took the escape and rescue statutes from the FBI and gave them to the U.S. Marshals. So all the escape cases that the FBI used to have all came over in a batch. That was just one of them.
So it was just a bureaucratic paper shift.
Yep. That's all it was.
But normally, I mean, was the FBI always the point people even back in the 60s during an escape?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we took it over in 78, 79, I think, 1979.
79.
Yeah, 1979.
What do you think? What do you think it would have been? How it would have played out differently had the U.S. Marshal been the point from the get-go?
I don't think. I'll tell you. I've said this before. I think the FBI did an unbelievable job following up on every single lead, doing the interviews that they did. I mean, even the paper, even the reports you see, they're voluminous. I mean, it's unreal. They tracked every lead everywhere, whether it went internationally or not. I think they did a great job. They did everything that I would have done, that I've done on past escape cases, and they did it. I think maybe it would have worked out better if we were there for some of these initial interviews with some of these inmates. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I just know they did a pretty good job of wrapping up every loose end on the case back then.
Yeah, I mean, 17 volumes of a report. I mean, they definitely documented every single little piece. Well, so I say everything. There were several things that are not in the FBI file.
Right.
Yeah.
When you're talking cases that big, that much volume, you're going to get that.
But
but you've got key interviews that should be in the files that are not in the files. I'm talking about the 17 volumes that were released to the public.
Right. Now,
there might be other documents out there. I'm just saying the ones that were released to the public, key interviews, because I mean, like I said one time before, they interviewed people, some lady, my pie was stolen off of my windowsill.
Oh, I know.
I think I saw John as a bellhop in a New York hotel.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy things like
thousands of those. Thousands of I've seen.
Yet you don't see Officer Chechi's statement. You don't see Cliff Fish's statement.
I saw the two statements. I saw the statement from a bureau guy that said Cliff Fish that never happened. So I saw the report.
We got
FBI report.
That's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, even if it's not true, okay, I'm saying the FBI put things in there that they interviewed people we know wasn't true. So why would you not want to interview an Alcatraz guard, but you're okay to go interview some lady at a hotel who said they think they saw John?
Why do you think they didn't?
We're not going to
hold on. Why do you think they didn't interview any Alcatraz guards? They interviewed everybody.
But where is it? Because it's not in the file.
Ken, show me your FBI badge or your U.S. Marshal badge.
Hey,
all right, I'll share it with you. I'll read you into it. I'll read you on.
Hey, I've got a badge. You gave me one. Read me in.
Well, listen, Art, this has been great. It's always very lively.
No, hey, but we always shake hands, right, Ken?
Yes, of course.
We do it all the time.
Listen,
do this all the time.
We have a tremendous amount of respect for you and the work you've done.
Thank you. But I'll tell you, I enjoy the heck out of this. I've enjoyed Ken and David both. We've established a good friendship over the years, and we've had disagreements and we've had some agreements on stuff.
Sure.
So it's the way these cases go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But listen, we're standing by. So
yeah,
we are definitely standing by. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Art. We love having you on. It's always great.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. You take care.
Yeah. See you guys. Ken, I'll talk later, buddy.
Okay.
All right.
All right, man. Bye-bye.